My sponsor told me once, he said, Chris, the only power you have on probation, he says, nobody has ultimate power over you, okay? Because you can still drink on probation. You'll have to deal with the consequences, but because even God won't take away your free will, okay? He said, but if somebody has authority over you, while they have the authority over you, they can make your life hell. Get a crappy boss. They can make your life hell. Okay? As long as they have the authority. He says the only thing you have power over, really, when you're on probation is to not give them ammunition. My friend Phyllis, for the first 5 years she was sober, was on antabuse because she says, Chris, I have no off switch from the time I think about it to actually going and drinking. She goes, that's just me. She goes, she actually went and put herself on that program by herself and volunteered for it because she says, I know myself, Chris. She said, there's no censor, there's no off switch. I think about it and I go do it. And she said, I don't want to die, from alcoholism. And so for her, it was a great tool, right? Tools, there's lots of tools you can grab in recovery. And she says until she got enough support, got enough, faith in herself that she could handle situations and, a sponsor and all that kind of stuff built up and enough experience in recovery, not drinking, that she handled a lot of life situations without it. And she's a woman that started drinking at 4 years old. Okay, because her mom and dad used to give her alcohol to make her go to bed and get sleepy. Yeah. Yeah, that lazy way of parenting, right? Like they don't want to deal with it, okay? All right, so preparation is when you start connecting with other people in recovery. Action is when you actually put that plan into place. You start doing things like making a commitment to not drink and use no matter what. You're connecting with other people in recovery. You're going to meetings. You're, following suggestions. You're doing all those other kind of things like that. Okay, so that's when you're actually putting this program into action. And the next stage they call is maintenance. That's when you have some time under your belt. It actually becomes more comfortable not to use than it is to use for more of the time. Okay, it's the day that you wake up and go, I didn't think about drinking and using yesterday, and that took me 18 months. Every day for 18 months I woke up and I was like, I think about drinking and using. And my sponsor kept saying, if you stay clean long enough, Chris, there will come a day when you wake up and go, you didn't think about drinking or using the day before. And I go, that will never happen. That will never happen. He goes, I'm telling you it will. It was about 18 months for me. Okay, and then I woke up one day and I was like, holy crap, I didn't even think about getting high yesterday or drinking. It was a miracle. I was like, wow, totally shocked me. And I called him. I was like, Bill, holy crap. And he goes, I think you're in the maintenance stage, Chris. Okay.
The time is similar to what you're talking about. When I could walk down the street and those beer signs would fall down.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's kind of like everything, like we talked about at the beginning, grief. Everything if you lose a tooth, your tongue keeps going over to it. You break up with somebody, that's our song, that's where we first ate, that's where we first did everything can remind you of it at the beginning. Okay, so maintenance is when you're actually invested, you're feeling more confident in your ability to stay clean than not, all that kind of stuff. And that's where most treatment programs tell you that recovery winds up. But what they don't tell you is that life keeps happening. Life keeps happening, yeah.
What if you're not in denial about your substance? What if you know how bad it is for you and how bad you two are together, and you want to break up, but you just it's not that you can't, you just don't. You know how bad it is for you. You know what it's doing to your life.
Yeah.
And you keep.
Well, my sponsor told me this. He says, Chris, you cannot stop something if you don't put something else in its place. He says, if you're having a struggle, you have not found what it is needs to go in that place. So one of the things he did was, he said to me, he says, I want you to write down every positive thing that alcohol and drugs did for you. Because, I was in court-ordered treatment 8 times. I've been to Hazleton, CRT, all the big places, right? Because my folks had money, and they just, tried to, heal me. And every damn treatment center I went to made me write a life story. And after the second one, I went, really, people? Really? Do I have to do this again? Like, why do I keep peeling this scab off this wound? Holy crap, I know how I got here. And they would say, oh, you're being resistant to therapy. Do we have to? I mean, they actually said that to me. They're like, oh, we think we have to, like, oh, Chris. And they would say, well, I think we have to report this to your probation officer. You know, that you're not participating fully in your therapy. And I was like, oh, okay. So here I am going again, right? Writing another one over again. And I go, you cannot heal. I used to tell them, I'd say, listen, you cannot heal with shame and criticism. Accountability is one thing, right? Where you like have to be responsible. That's a totally different thing. You know, the two words that all active alcoholics hate are grow up. And the other two are be responsible. We don't like that, okay? Because we are immature in a lot of ways. We haven't grown yet because alcohol and drugs stopped us from growing. So we do have to grow up and it's not easy. But I said, oh my God. So my sponsor was the first person that ever said to me, what are the positive things that it did for you? And I went, what? And he said, you've never been asked that in treatment? I said, hell no. I was like, are you kidding? He says, are you kidding me? He goes, that is a crime. Because underneath every relapse, Chris, every active use, like lapse where you use, when you know it's not good for you, underneath it, even though the behavior isn't healthy and it can be self-destructive, right? If you know it's not good for you, underneath it is something very spiritual and healthy. There's a need there, a feeling that has to be validated or a need that has to be met, that your alcohol and drugs is tied to. It's associated with that. And it's the way that you always got that need met. The first question he ever asked me when we sat down and he like agreed to be my sponsor, he sat down and he goes, okay, listen, I'm going to ask you this question. I just want you to, right off the top of your head, when your addictions talk to you, Chris, do you thank them for showing up? With sincere gratitude. And I went, hell no. I said, oh my God, Bill, I have cancer. I'm going to die if I use. The doctors told me that, okay? The judge is going to put me in prison for 20 years because he's done, okay? He looked at me, remember I told you the last time I got arrested for stealing that self-help book from the bookstore, okay? All right? And he was like, this is pathetic. I'm done. He was so pissed. He was just so mad, right? And so he was like, I said, I'm not happy when my addictions talk to me. And he goes, really? He goes, if that doesn't change, you are going to die a drunk and a dope fiend, Chris, and you're probably going to go to prison first. And I went, Bill, I'm really smart. I went to college when I was like just almost 13. I had a master's degree by the time I was almost 18. And so, but I don't get that. I don't understand that. And he looked at me and he said, at some point, Chris, everybody's self-destructive behavior as an adult was brilliant when they were younger. It did something for you. So he said, how old were you when you started drinking and getting high? And I said, 10. He goes, who the hell needs to get high at 10? If you had a kid at 10, like, would you be getting high and drunk with your kid like your dad did? And I sat there and I went, no. And he goes, what the hell? Why did you have to do that at that age? And I said, well, my dad, someone told me once they met my dad and they said, oh, wow, Chris, you grew up in a concentration camp but told you're supposed to love the guard. Because your dad is a violent, crazy POW survivor from Vietnam. PTSD, violent, crazy, made us play Russian roulette with a real live round. He would get drunk and do that kind of stuff. He sexually abused me for probably 15 years from the age of 3 till I finally got out of that house at 18. Almost every day. Okay? And beat the hell out of me all the time. Traumatized all of us constantly. Okay? So my sponsor said, what would you have done if you hadn't had alcohol and drugs? And I said, I would have killed him and me. Probably him first and then myself. And he goes, so wasn't it brilliant? Wasn't it brilliant? What if, at some point, he says, that's the thing we've got to get to, Chris, is that the positive things that it does for you, you have to find another way to get those needs met. And if you don't have those, you're going to look in your back. He goes, Chris, I feel sorry for you because some people come into recovery and they've had more positive family histories growing up. They got addicted later, but they had a lot of success, support, encouragement, in life, and they learned how to do things that you have no clue how to do. And when they get sober and they look in their bag of skills, they got a lot of like things to pick from to like cope with life and deal with things. And he goes, you look in your bag of skills and you got drinking and using, acting out on your plethora of addictions that you have. Okay, you can't use those anymore now. Okay, going crazy or killing yourself. You don't have any healthy coping skills. You have no like healthy relationship skills. You don't know how to do life at all. I mean, you are so ill-equipped for life. And he said, now you look in your bag, Chris, and you go, I got drinking and using, because that's where the life happens, right? Where it says life happens on this sheet. Life happens, right? And where is that? Life happens and you get those automatic thoughts about drinking and using, because life throws you something that was tied to or associated with your drinking and your using. He said, you know, and the more that your life was surrounded, the more positive things that you got from it, Chris, the more things make you think about it when you get sober. And so he said, breathing for you, Chris, is a trigger. Waking up is a trigger for you, Chris. Somebody mad at you is a trigger. Okay? Like everything, like celebration is a trigger for you, Chris, because you didn't know how to have fun without it, right? He said, so, you know, why do most people relapse around a year? Because it's a celebration. It's a trigger, right? You know, that first year, it's a big thing, and people go, that's crazy. Why would they drink after a year? And I go, because it was a trigger. If you don't like, the number one question when I sponsor people that they always ask me when we start working together is, how do you have fun if you're not going to get high? My life is over. This is so boring. And I was 24, right? And I was going, life's over, Bill. I'm only 24, and everybody else is partying and doing this and whatever. He says, don't worry about it, Chris. You used and spilled more drugs and alcohol than anybody will ever drink in their life for the last 15 years. And I was like, yeah, that's sure I got a head start, right? Okay, so that was the question he asked me. He says, if you can't thank it for showing up, you have to form an alliance with your addiction. I actually went to this treatment program where they called it the beast. And you had to accuse the beast whenever it talked to you and you know, they had this, it was like you whatever. And he goes, that goes so against step 1 of a 12-step program where it says we're powerless over it. The powerlessness is also that every time for the rest of your life, your addiction will go with you. Knowledge of yourself will never divorce you from yourself, Chris, ever. So he said, you just have to get an alliance with it today instead of, you know, a fighting relationship with it.
So you can come over, but you can't come in.
Yeah, because he said, you know what? He said, you know, Chris, you thank it for showing up and say thank you.
You can't come in.
Okay, but then you go talk about it at a meeting, call me, say, I really, really want to drink and use right now. That's where you start using those tools like the safety card. If you've already got one of those, you know, you start using the resources and tools. Because I said, Bill, I'm going to be calling you every freaking, 10 minutes. Because seriously, I looked at he says, if you look in your bag of skills and you go, I got drinking and using, going crazy, or killing myself. And drinking and using is no longer an option. Like people kill themselves because they really don't want to go crazy. Okay, going crazy sucks. It really does. It is not. It is so uncomfortable to go crazy. People would kill themselves and other people before they go crazy. And so if you look in your bag, Chris, and he goes, you got drinking and using, going crazy, or killing yourself, and you have no other ways to get the positive needs met, he goes, what's the healthiest option out of all of those?
Drinking.
Yeah. It's the only one you get a reward from, right? If I kill myself, then you know what? It's all over, okay? I'm going to get some instant relief, but, you know, it's kind of like it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem.